Hey kiddos, so we are still reading our second book and we are on chapter 7 today. Let's see how far we can get today. So chapter 7, King Flibbert Gibbet, I'm guessing, that's a different name. Red screeched to a halt at the bottom of the other hill, and just to keep things the same, Evan went flying over the handlebars and crashed a second time. Sorry, Red hollered. Bring. It's okay, Evan said, coming back, brushing grass and dirt from his hair and clothes. I'll be right back. I'm going to go talk to the king up there. You wait here, okay? Bring. Does that mean yes? Evan asked his excitable new friend. Bring. Evan walked up the other hill, shaking his head, attempting to just roll with it. He could already hear the king shouting orders to the creatures down below. Move it, gullywogs, the king shouted. Take a lesson from the aunts, you lazy bones. The king was yelling at a large group of two-headed creatures who were sitting on the steps outside one of the shops down below, lazing about, fanning themselves with miniature fans and sipping iced tea. Evan looked back over his shoulder, recognizing the gollywogs from the description in the last paragraph. He also recognized the other groups of creatures he presumed were the aunts. Those creatures were much smaller than the gollywogs, with colorful clothing and frizzy gray hair. The aunts all looked very similar to Evan's aunt, Fredonia, who came over to visit once a month and would always get in a dither whenever there was cleaning to do. Don't come crying to me if Queen Mother catches you sitting around and decides to turn you into three-headed gollywogs, the king shouted, never ceasing to wave his wand. Oh, wave your wand at someone else, you silly little man, one of the gollywogs shouted back. First, we had no head. Then we had one head. And now two heads. I don't care if that old queen turns us into 15-headed gollywogs. It's too hot today, and we simply cannot lift a finger. Suddenly, before any more confusing dialogue, Evan reached the top of the hill. Good morning, Evan, said the king. How are you today, my inquisitive young friend? How did you know my name? Evan asked, eyeing the king suspiciously. And what does inquisitive mean? The king was certainly dressed like a royal person. He wore a regal gown, funny pointed shoes with a great big crown on top of his head, but he had an abnormally round face, a bushy beard, and a smile that went from one incredibly tiny ear to the other. On top of all those bizarre features, he had twinkly blue eyes, huge curly eyebrows, and was extremely short. The man was barely as tall as Evan. He held a wand in his right hand, which he used to conduct the entire town like a symphony. As for your first question, I know your name because it saves a long introduction, the king said. You, however, do not know my name, therefore, and so forth, I will give it to you, free of charge, of course. My name is King Flibbertigibbet. Then King Flibbertigibbet started rapping. I am king, I am not a ding-a-ling. I can't dance, I sure can't sing, but that's okay because I'm king. King who? King huh? King where? King tut? No, I'm King Flibbertigibbet. That really didn't rhyme, but that's okay. I conduct the town in superfly way. I am the king, so hear me roar and sneeze and toot and belch and snore. I wave my wand and so much more. Queen Mother is the one who's really in charge. But I do stuff too, and it's not too hard. I'm short and round and plump and cute. 3 cheers for me. Woot, woot, woot. A cow goes moo. Frog goes ribbit. I am the king, King Flibbertigibbet. And there's the king. There's the king. All right. By the time King Flibbertigibbet finished his terrible rap song, Evan was shaking his head in a most cynical way. Even the king himself looked a little embarrassed about his lame introduction song and how bad of a rapper he was. Sorry about the last part, the king said, showing off his bling. But there aren't a lot of words that rhyme with Flibbertigibbet, you know? Dog, King Flibbertigibbet. That's a nice, simple name, Evan said, not even trying to hide his sarcasm. So, where's your castle? Right there, King Flibbertigibbet said, pointing at his feet. Every king needs a castle, even if isn't quite to scale. Evan looked to where King Flibbertigibbet was pointing and saw a toy castle, exactly like the one he had back home, but had recently deemed himself too mature to play with. That's not a real castle, Evan said, unimpressed. That's a dumb toy castle. Ah, King Flibbertigibbet said, with a toothy grin spreading across his chubby face. As cheeky in our world as you are in your own. How delightful. So far, Evan did not like King Flibbertigibbet all that much. The king certainly seemed to know a lot about him, which caused Evan to feel very uncomfortable. As for your second question, which everyone has probably forgotten by now since you asked it 6 pages ago, what does inquisitive mean? I can answer that for you too, the king said, or perhaps I can spell it for you, maybe by writing it on the back of my hand. Evan's face suddenly turned white as something that's really white. Somehow, some way, King Flibbertigibbet knew Evan's deep, dark secret. I have no idea what you're talking about, Evan said, crossing his arms and trying to look innocent. He knew this was a big fat lie, yet he couldn't stop it from spilling from his mouth. Evan knew exactly what King Flibbertigibbet was talking about, but had no idea how he knew, except what he was talking about, the spelling bee competition, regardless of how the king knew about this terrible episode from Evan's past, which will be explained momentarily. It was something that had been bugging him all week, since last Thursday to be exact. Chapter 7.5. Cheating on the Thursday morning spelling bee competition. Uh-oh. Every Thursday at Evan's school, Mrs. Town, Evan's teacher, in case you weren't sure, put on a spelling bee competition. 5 students get to stand up in front of the class and have a spell-off. If you spell your word correctly, you go on to the next round. If you MISSPELL, your word, you have to sit down. Then you don't get to win the big scrumptious chocolate bar that Mrs. Town hands out for first place. Evan was an okay speller, but he had never won the spelling bee, not until last Thursday, that is. Here's what happened. On Wednesday, the day before the competition, just a few minutes before class was over for the day, Evan accidentally took a long, very long look at a certain sheet of paper on Mrs. Town's desk. Written on this particular sheet of paper were the words she was going to ask about the spelling during the spelling competition. Evan walked home that day as quickly as he could, accidentally repeating the words over and over again so he wouldn't forget them. When he got home, he found each word in the big dictionary that Father kept in his study. Evan tried to memorize the spelling of those difficult words: daffodil, basket, kitchen, handcuffs, serious, and piccolo, just to name a few, but he just couldn't make his brain remember them all. That's why he decided the best thing to do would be to write them down on his hand. On Thursday, when it was Evan's turn to spell a word, he put his hand up to his face, pretending to be thinking really hard, when he was really just reading the words off the back of his hand. Lucky for him, and for the sake of this long sub-story making sense, nearly every single word Evan had written down on his hand was one of the words Mrs. Town asked him to spell. The ones he didn't know, he just guessed. And just to keep things moving along, let's just say that Evan was a terrific guesser. Evan ended up winning the contest. He took first place, so he got the big scrumptious chocolate bar. He ate the whole thing at recess right in front of everyone. He didn't share a single bite with any of his classmates. Afterwards, Evan felt terrible for 2 reasons. One reason was because of the overload of processed sugar. The second reason was that he knew he had cheated in order to win. All he could do was sit on the merry-go-round with a big, goofy, satisfied grin on his face. The sugar crash came later. So did the shame. Chapter 7 3/4. The 7 nights of the week. It's a different kind of nights. I didn't cheat, Evan shouted to the king, even though he knew very well that cheating was the only reason he'd won the spelling bee competition just 2 days ago. No, of course not, King Flibbergibbet said, giving Evan a curious look. You, Evan Jacobson, cheat? No way. Never. Certainly your parents taught you better than that. Evan stared at his feet. King Flibbergibbet waved his wand at a group of rhinoceros-sized creatures who were squatting down, getting ready to do you-know-what on the fresh-cut green grass at the bottom of the other hill. Well, if you didn't cheat, like you say, then perhaps you could prove it. Okay, how? Evan asked, desperately wanting to prove himself innocent. Easy. Spell argle-bargle, King Flibbergibbet said, as he conducted the rhino dogs around to the far side of the hill to where a large sign read, Potty Field. Surely a boy who can spell the word daffodil, while looking at what's written on the back of his hand, can spell something as simple as argle-bargle. Evan nervously rubbed his hands together. He didn't even know what an argle-bargle was, let alone how to spell it. No. Well, how about quidnicook? The king said, still conducting the chaos down below. A bibliophobia. Bao yang. Gardiolu. Evan shrugged his shoulders. None of those? King Flibbergibbet said with a know-it-all smirk on his face. Surely, an excellent speller like yourself shouts Gardiolu every time you throw a bucket of goop out a window. Evan shook his head because he knew none of those strange words. What's worse, he was starting to feel guiltier and guiltier about what he'd done. He'd wished he could go back in time and do the whole thing over, this time without cheating. Gobberlunzi, Hauska, Goobly-gook. The king went on, naming more ridiculous words that no one had ever heard of, but which really are real words. Oh, come on now. Surely a smart young man like you should know how to spell. Evan shook his head. Such a pity, the king said, and such a no good, filthy, rotten, sneaking, conniving, scheming, sinister, misguided, imprudent, harsh, thoughtless, uncaring, foolish, pedantic, illegal, plotting, vicious, unhumanitarian, vile, corruptive, disgusting, low-down, uncouth, selfish, nasty, lying little cheater you are! Ho, ho! I didn't cheat! Evan shouted, his face as red as something that's really red. He didn't know who the short, stubby, know-it-all king thought he was, but Evan certainly didn't appreciate being called a liar or a cheat or any of those other things in the last paragraph, even if it was all true. Evan was a liar. Evan was a cheater. He now felt very bad about what he'd done in class, but there was nothing he could do about it right now because the story simply had to move forward. There's no sense in denying it, silly child. Of course you cheated. King Flibbergibbet smiled and waved his wand with gusto. And that's why you're going to jail for the rest of your life. Guards, take him away. And just like that, with a simple flick of his magical conductor wand, a goggle of knights came clanging and banging up the hill. Forward marcheth! One of the knights shouted, and marcheth they did. This group of knights was the most uncoordinated bunch of kings in shining armor that Evan had ever seen. Up the hill, up the hill. There were 7 knights in total, each one wearing battle armor that was either 2 sizes too big or 2 sizes too small. Their knees either buckled because of the immense weight or peeked through the cracks because of their armor was too small. Their voices sounded distant and echoey as they shouted orders at each other. This was because their helmets were on backwards, which was why they couldn't see which way they were going, which was why they were constantly crashing into each other. While never missing a beat with his conducting, King Flibbertigibbet explained to Evan that the knights marching up the other hill, the ones who were about to take him to jail for the rest of his life, were the 7 nights of the week. Their names, of course, are Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. Yeah, I get it, Evan interrupted. He shook his head at the not-so-cleverness of it all. Pretty lame. If you need to stop here to let the lameness pass, then please do. If not, read on. Continued. Left, right, left! Monday night shouted, the one leading the brigade. Left, right, left! Tuesday night said, I thought it was right, left, right. No, it's right, right, left, left, you pea-brain! Thursday night said, oh, shut up and listen to me, demanded Monday night. Left, right, ouch! Shouted Tuesday night. That was my foot! I've been asking you to please stop doing that for an extremely very long time, for hundreds of years. What? Said Wednesday night, his voice tiny and echoey inside his helmet. Saturday night couldn't make out any of the conversation. Could you repeat that? I can't hear any of you because my helmet is on backwards. Mine too, said Friday night. Monday night whacked me with that dumb spear of his. Now I can't see where I'm going. And I can't hear what I'm saying. And I can't speak without an exclamation marks. King Flibbertigibbet conducted and guided the disorganized knights up the hill. Right this way, gentlemen, just follow the sound of my voice. Eventually, the 7 knights made it to the top of the hill, collapsing in a big pile of armor. This is our little cheater right here, King Flibbertigibbet said. Then he passed his wand to the snippet, the same one Evan had met earlier who had conveniently appeared out of nowhere. The snippet stuck his tongue out at Evan, which disappeared and then reappeared. Then the rude little creature took over conducting the town while King Flibbertigibbet spoke to the 7 nights of the week. This one here is the cheater, the king said, unnecessarily loud. He took a moment to dab his sweaty forehead with a handkerchief. It was the very same kind of handkerchief that Evan's father used to wipe his sweaty forehead whenever he was working in the yard, mowing the lawn or tinkering with his piece of junk car. I can't stand cheaters, shouted a knight from somewhere at the bottom of the pile. Yeah, me either. Yeah, me neither. Oh, be quiet. You can't even spell cheater. Can't you? C-H-E-E-T. Incorrect. Gentlemen, the king interrupted. I know you're all terrific word spellers, able to do so without cheating. This one here, however, King Flibbertigibbet pointed at Evan, he is not as noble as you, since he is a disreputable spelling bee cheater. Therefore, and furthermore, I command that you take him down to the jailhouse and lock him up for the rest of his life, plus 1 extra year for every word he cheated on. The 7 nights of the week all saluted the king, saying, aye, aye, captain, like they were a bunch of sailors or something. Okay, then, the king said, off with you. Then he took his wand back from the snippet and continued to conduct all the creatures down below. You heard me! Off to jail! Off to jail! The knights all shouted. They grabbed a hold of Evan and dragged him down the hill and off to jail, shouting in unison, off to jail, 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 until it got very tiresome. And with that, kiddos, we finished chapter 7.